We open with a woman running through the brush in the jungles of Brazil. She's dressed in a white full-body robe with cloth pulled up over her nose and mouth. An intricate design of blue, gold, and purple rests on her chest and runs down the front of her outfit. A small golden decoration rests in the center of her cloth-covered forehead. Behind her is a man. We don't see much of him right now, but we can tell that he is muscular. He cocks some kind of harpoon launcher that is strapped to his right forearm. "You're a long way from home," he says. His word bubbles are all black with white lettering indicating something about his speech. I guess it means that he sounds scary, but we don't really have a lot of details yet. As the woman runs, her irises turn gold, and she has a vision. She sees herself being shot through the chest by the harpoon, and she immediately sidesteps. In reality, the harpoon streaks just past her, lodging into a tree. A small red light then activates from the harpoon, and it beeps once, and then it explodes. Through the fire and the flames, the male form approaches her. He has long, thin knives in each of his hands. "You may see the future," he tells his prey, "but you don't see everything." The woman is recovering from the blast. She's clearly taken damage, but she's still alive. Parts of her clothing are on fire, though. She looks up at the hunter. He stands revealed as a thick, muscular man. His costume is all black, and I'm talking from neck to toe. Armored boots hide more knives. A metal carapace smoothly moves up his shoulders, plugging into a large metal helmet. The helmet is shaped like an almond, with the pointy ends sitting horizontal. Two massive, glowing red lenses stare out, giving the hunter a cold, inhuman stare. "You don't see everything," he said. "Do you?" The woman glares at him. She has one hand held under her chest as if she's cradling a wound. She says, "Salam alaikum," an Arabic phrase meaning "peace be upon you," and then she swings out with a small sword. The hunter deflects the blade deftly once, then twice. She jumps over him, preparing for another run into the jungle. The hunter turns, his scarlet lenses crackling with energy. Then he unleashes a powerful blast of energy into her, catching her squarely in the chest. She falls back to the ground. The hunter kneels before her. "Let's do this face to face." He pulls off her head covers, revealing a beautiful yet bloody face. He then releases the pressure on his helmet and pulls it off. "Kahina the Seer," he says. "You're looking for the savage girl, aren't you? I find her, then she dies like you will." He leans in, exposing a handsome, if serious face. He is a black man with a shaved head and stubble along his jaw. 3 long scars run from the right side of his head across his face. "After I kill you, I'll go to Tehran and I'll kill your family," he says. "Your husband, your children, I'll gut them like fish." He holds up one of his knives, pressing its tip into her chest. He puts the other hand on top of the fist and then presses in. Her hands claw at his face. She stammers out one last word. "Arthur!" The hunter remains unaffected by her death. "Arthur can't help you now. He's going to lose everything he cares about, just like I had to." He puts his knives away. Then he pulls a small box from the folds of Kahina's dress. Inside it is some kind of golden ornament or decoration. I cannot tell you what it's supposed to be for the life of me. Maybe best guess it's a fish of some kind? The hunter then puts his helmet back on and leaves the scene. As Kahina the Seer dies, her eyes turn gold one last time. She sees the hunter stabbing Aquaman in the gut with his own trident. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown, episode 26.5, Aquaman and the Others. Holy show, what an opening! This scene was 9 pages, so that is almost half of this issue, issue 7, gone already. But Geoff Johns wouldn't spend his pages willy-nilly. He is doing a lot of work here. The woman, Kahina, is one of the people on the cover of this issue, so already we know that she has history with Arthur, which is confirmed just before her untimely death. I won't lie, I flooping hate that the creative team kills her here. I go into this story expecting a whole secret team with mysterious backgrounds to explore and strange powers to check out. Like, I am expecting this to be the launching point for months of storytelling, exploring these new characters and concepts, again, like what we saw over in Geoff Johns' Green Lanterns run. But we're half an issue in and we're already down one of them. That sucks! Ugh! Add on top of that complaint the fact that Johns just killed off one of the only 2 women in this entire group, and I'm even more annoyed. And then on top of that, there was also the fact that she is a Muslim character who we don't get to see a lot of in American comics. We are 3 for 3 on reasons why I don't want to see a character die here. And it just seems like such a waste of potential. But her death is used to demonstrate how absolutely badass the Hunter character is. He goes totally unnamed in this scene, but that's because he is also one of the characters that the creative team just kind of assumes you know. If you're familiar with Aquaman, if you're buying an Aquaman comic, then you should probably be familiar with Black Manta. I'm giving y'all his name here to make talking about him easier, but I am not going to go into any of the character's background or comic book history. The New 52, after all, was meant to be a clean start for DC continuity, allowing people unfamiliar with these characters and concepts to just meet them without any of that history. People like me who picked up very few DC books in their time. So I'm only going to be passing on what Geoff Johns tells us in this story. As far as I'm concerned, that's the only information I need to know about Black Manta right now. And in this scene, Johns is telling us that the Black Manta is dangerous, he is well armed, he is relentless, he is prepared, and he is ruthless. Manta clearly knew about Kahina's ability to see the future. That's why he knew to install an explosive device on his harpoon. He figured that Kahina could see the future, but he was betting that she could only see so much of it. You expect a harpoon's puncturing ability to be the real threat, right? With the added explosive, it's not a single person attack, but an area of effect attack. This also indicates that Manta has done his research. He knows where Kahina lives. He knows that she's married. He knows that she has a child. He even knows who she is looking for here in Brazil. The Savage One, he said. This is a man who takes his time to know what he's doing. We also see a demonstration of what Black Manta can do from a superpower perspective. He is smart, he is armed with mini harpoons and knives, he's clearly a skilled combatant, his helmet is pressurized, probably so that he can breathe underwater, given Black Manta hunting Aquaman, and we know that he can fire off blasts of incinerating energy. My own vague familiarity with Black Manta came from watching the Super Friends cartoon in rerun form on Cartoon Network back when I was younger, and I always thought that he was one of the doofiest looking bad guys that I'd ever seen. That horizontal wide helmet with its big googly eyes just looked so stupid. Johns used the last 6 issues of this comic to reestablish how powerful, serious, and badass Aquaman is. And with the opening of this comic, Johns is doing the same work for Black Manta. And for me at least, it works. Wow, what a scene! Manta feels like a threat, and that is coming from someone who previously thought that he was a big doofus, so they do an excellent job here. We now jump to the Atlantic Ocean, where we find Aquaman and Mera battling a storm in order to save a ship. Aquaman has grabbed the ship by its chain that is connected to the anchor, and he is trying to pull it to safety. Mera, meanwhile, is using her ability to control water to redirect the massive waves that threaten the ship. The pair of them pull the ship to safety, and then they go ashore, to the home of Stephen Shin. Mera is surprised that they are done helping people, actually. She says that the storm is only just beginning. But Arthur says that they have brought in every ship that they could find. There's nothing else that they can do out here. and Dr. Shin is the foremost expert on Atlantis that he knows of. If anyone can tell them about the glyph that he found, it is Shin. Mara finds that hard to believe. This relic is ancient history, she says. A history that even Arthur, who has been to Atlantis, doesn't know. Why would Shin? Arthur doesn't have an answer. But 4 Atlanteans came out of the water to retrieve this thing, and he doesn't know anyone else that he can ask. He could ask the Atlanteans, Mara suggests, but they shot at him once before. Why wouldn't they shoot at him now? Arthur replies. No, he can't trust Atlantis. Mara eyes him. But you think you can trust Shin now? When it comes to Atlantis, Arthur replies, it is the only thing that he will trust Shin about. Inside, we find Dr. Shin in about the same state that we saw him last time. His place is a mess, and he has on news stories about Aquaman. They're talking about Aquaman and Aquawoman saving the boats from the storms, but they also bring up Mara's recent trip to town. She is still wanted by authorities, actually, and then Shin's phone rings. He picks it up, but whoever is on the other end hangs up quickly. This panel also reveals that Shin has a large mass of scar tissue on the right side of his throat near his shoulder. I thought that I saw it previously in issue 3, but the panel was so small that I just couldn't tell for sure. But there is definitely something there. It's completely noticeable this time around. After his spooky phone call, Shin's door is suddenly slammed open. And I'm talking like we can see his locks shatter out of the door frame. And so he shouts, "What do you want now?" as Aquaman and Mara enter his home. Arthur explains about the glyph and holds out the A-shaped relic. Shin is surprised that Arthur trusts him with this, but he is eager to investigate it. He needs salt water to submerge it in before he can begin to gather the data that is stored on it. Mara asks the important question here. Can Shin do it? Can he tell them if someone sank Atlantis or not? I don't know how Shin is supposed to know that, Mara. Like, you're an underwater person. Wouldn't you be the one who knows this? And furthermore, I don't think the information about whether or not Atlantis sank would be on this glyph, given that we were told that the ship sank before Atlantis sank. So why would that have any information about it? Maybe it has a clue or a bit of information they could use, and I would buy that, but Shin seems to be the wrong guy to be asking for me. Anyways, Shin gives the best scientific response that one can. If the evidence shows that someone sank Atlantis, then yes, someone sank Atlantis. When it was at the height of its power, Atlantis was the most powerful and advanced nation on Earth. Everyone on the planet would want what they had, so they would have had plenty of enemies. Shin asks if they found this glyph in the trench, and when he is told yes, he asks about the creatures. What did Arthur do about them? Mara begins to say that it is none of Shin's business, but Arthur answers truthfully. He triggered a volcanic event, sealed the trench, and killed them all. Those creatures survived for thousands of years, Shin says, and he's confident that they'll find a way to survive somehow. Having now filled up his sink with water, Shin dumps a bunch of salt into it. He puts the glyph in, and the water hologram appears again and starts to play, repeating what we saw in issue 5 to Arthur. The Doctor's eyes go wide, looking at the water hologram. Magnificent. Mara warns Arthur that his trident is glowing, and a ball of golden energy suddenly materializes in Shin's living room. Arthur shouts for them both to get down. He draws his trident as a woman and a jaguar drop out of the globe in a burst of energy. "Stay back, Arthur," she shouts. "Shin is mine to kill." Twin knives in the woman's hands slash downward, but Arthur blocks them with his body. The woman rolls over him, diving for Shin, but now Mara tackles her. The impact takes them both through Shin's wall, shattering a side of his house. The newcomer rolls, throwing Mara off, who lands on her own feet. Using her waterbending, Mara creates her own jaguar and sicks it on the stranger. We see her concentrate, and circles like Arthur's telepathy emit from the stranger's mind. Her jaguar jumps in front of her, shattering the water copy. Mera and the stranger begin to charge at each other, and Aquaman suddenly drops in between them. Yo, hey, cut it out, stop, calm down. The woman, who is named Yawara, can't believe that she is hearing this. Since when has Arthur been calm? And when did he start caring about surface dwellers like Steve and Shin? The woman sounds like she knows Arthur pretty well, leading to Mera asking who she is. Yawara ignores Mera, looking only to Aquaman. Kahina is dead, she reports. Black Manta killed her. He butchered her, and he took the golden seal from her. From the remains of his house, Dr. Shin says in horror, Black Manta has one of the relics of Atlantis? Turning, Yawara accuses Shin of telling Manta her location. He's had a grudge against the others for a long time. He's the one behind this. Shin claims ignorance of what is going on, but Yawara is certain that he is behind it. If Black Manta is involved, then Shin must be as well. Mera has finally had enough. Arthur? What is going on? And who the hell is she? Mera asks. In the ruins of Shin's house, we then cut to a photograph that has been published inside of a book. In the ruins of Shin's house, we cut to a photograph that is published inside of a book. It's of a younger Arthur, who is shirtless, with some Atlantean jewelry around his neck. His hand is up to block the camera, or to stop the photographer, you can't tell which. Behind him in the photo are all of the others, capital O. Each one of them has a post-it note with their name written on it, and the image of their relic drawn on it next to them. First, we have Yawara with a globe around her neck. The prisoner with a pair of bracers on each forearm. A golden chain hangs from each one of them, currently unconnected. The operative is dressed in an all-black spy outfit with some kind of forked instrument. I cannot tell what that is supposed to be. Vostok X has a jetpack and the golden mask. Kahina the Seer has the golden seal. And Arthur has the trident. Remember the last time that we saw Dr. Shin? Back in the end of issue 2, I think it was? When Arthur brought him the corpse of the creature from the trench, Shin said, "You kept the trident. He will come for it." Was Shin talking about Black Manta? If so, that is some nice setup, Jeff Johns. Very nice. Based on what we've seen here, there is clearly a shared history between Dr. Shin, Black Manta, Aquaman, and the others. We were already told that Shin tried to kill Arthur once before. That is what seemed to lead to the emotional distance that exists between them. So maybe Black Manta and Shin teamed up previously? I am a bit confused about Shin's role in this story just in general. Johns has established that the surface world thinks that Atlantis isn't real, and that Shin's career has been destroyed as a result of his fanboyish obsession with it. So the idea that Aquaman and Mera, who I would assume have been to Atlantis and have first-hand knowledge of Atlantis, would go to Shin for Atlantean historical information at all feels really weird to me. Why would Shin know anything historical about Atlantis? I get that he's a fan. I was a fan too when I was younger, but there is only so much to know without actually going there or having something physical to research, right? Or talking to someone who has been there. And I would have thought that the person who had been there was the king of Atlantis, Arthur Curry. But Arthur goes to Shin for answers, so that clearly can't be the case. When Arthur hands Shin the A glyph, Shin automatically says that he needs salt water to submerge it in order to access the information on it. This matches what we saw demonstrated last issue, so huzzah for deductive reasoning. But why does Shin know that's how Atlantean technology works? The blanket answer of, "He studies Atlantis," doesn't work if there is nothing from Atlantis to study, and if there is stuff from Atlantis to study, then why is Shin such a joke to begin with? Johns is handing us all these little Dr. Shin related puzzle pieces, but they just aren't quite fitting together right. Maybe just right now they're not. Maybe there's more stuff coming that we're going to learn that will justify some of these ideas, but right now this kind of looks a little bit like a well-hidden mess. Yawara is the other big surprise for this issue. She is a physically fit woman with light brown skin. She is the savage girl that Kahina was trying to find in Brazil when Black Manta killed her. She is dressed incredibly simply in a black swimsuit top and bottom. A loincloth covers her lady area, and she does have several cords or lengths of cloth that are wrapped around her legs or waist. A sheath for each of her knives adorns either thigh, tied to her. She has several long, thin ponytails wrapped in red and ending in circular hoops that emerge from her mass of curly black hair. She does also have a shock of white hair at the very front of it, a little bit like Rogue back in the 90s. There is also a triangular set of 3 red dots on her forehead, with the pointed end facing down. At her neck, she has a small golden bauble, which crackled with energy when she teleported in. This is clearly her Atlantean relic, and obviously it seems to allow her to teleport. Why she is able to telepathically order her jaguar around, I do not know. Arthur does it with fish because of his Atlantean genealogy, so maybe Yawara is like a hybrid jungle person whose family slept with jaguars? I have no idea. I have no clue. Hopefully we're going to find out before Yawara dies as well, so that she can continue to prove that Black Manta is a badass. I'm sorry. I'm still bitter about losing Kahina. Seeing Yawara interact with Arthur and Mera at the end of the issue is very interesting. First off, Yawara doesn't speak to Mera at all when they meet. Mera asks her who she is. Yawara does not answer. She actually turns to Arthur and talks to him instead, specifically ignoring Mera. And sure, Yawara knows Arthur and is more familiar with him, but Mera just held her own against her. She has no reason not to respect Mera as an opponent or as just another human being, and Mera is clearly allied with Arthur, at the very least. You know, the ally of my ally is my friend, you know? This demonstrates to me that Yawara respects and trusts Arthur, and only Arthur, at least for now. There was also an interesting balance of knowledge going on here. Johns has established that Mera doesn't know parts of Arthur's past before, and she clearly does not recognize Yawara, who knows Arthur, Shin, and Black Manta, and all of this stuff about Arthur's background. So whatever is going on with this woman, it is all new to Mera. But Johns has also demonstrated that Mera's got a bit of a complicated history with Arthur as well, and on some level, Arthur mistrusts her. Classically in a story, this level of unequal information would definitely lead to relationship troubles in the best of circumstances, and these certainly are not the best of circumstances. Arthur is about to face a deadly threat while allied with a man who tried to kill him once before, Dr. Shin, a woman who doesn't know who he is anymore, Yawara and potentially the rest of the others, and a woman who loves him but might not be happy about his secret past, Mera. Drama? Thy name is Arthur Curry, and I kinda love it. I also want to take a quick moment to bring up the artwork in this issue. I didn't really notice it until I was editing the YouTube video for the last episode, but last issue, issue 6, looks kinda bad. It isn't terrible, like it serves its purpose, and props to the art team of Ivan Reis, Joe Prado, and Rod Reis for knocking out 7 issues of this comic in a row so far. But the faces last issue were definitely off. The details were just a little more undefined, and the coloring maybe just a little less deft in general. And maybe that's because we were in a more mundane setting of like a grocery store for a lot of the issue, but just there's an overall drop in quality with issue 6. This issue, though, feels much more like a return to form from the opening 4 issues. It's got gorgeous colors, really detailed pages, and there's just lots of dark, moody shadows happening here. A lot more shadows than the previous issues, actually, because that's what they're going for. We've got heroes being hunted down by Black Manta. We've got dark secrets being brought to light for the first time in years. This is moody. This is dark. This is serious. It's great. It works really well. Perhaps even the storm that Aquaman and Mera battled at the beginning of this issue was meant to be a hint at the storm on the horizon, metaphorically hinting at Arthur's past in Black Manta and his relationship with the others. Maybe. Issue 7 starts us off 6 years ago. We are at Arthur's lighthouse, and a large crowd has gathered around it. A lot of the people there are news crews, and they are shouting questions at the house. How do you breathe underwater? Are you really Atlantean royalty? Tell us about Atlantis! We find Arthur bent over a kitchen table inside, staring at newspapers. One says that a marine biologist discovered a boy from Atlantis. Another one says, the Aquaman's father is killed. Oh. Nearby, a framed photograph of Tom Curry standing on the pier during a sunrise sits atop a credenza. Don't worry, one of the paparazzi says. He's got to come out sometime. Today's his father's funeral, after all. Well, heck. Tears in his eyes, Arthur flies into a rage. He tosses the table aside. He smashes a ship in a bottle, remembering the time that he built it with his father. Outside, we see Dr. Shin trying to push his way through the crowd. He has bandages for a fresh wound on his neck, the scarring that we've seen previously. The crowd recognizes him. Their density and questions grind his progress in the crowd to a complete halt. He just can't get any closer. At the house, Arthur suddenly smashes the door off his hinges. Wow, this guy does not like doors. Demanding to know what they all want! Many of the paparazzi were shoved over when he came out. And surprisingly, patiently, one of them calmly replies that they want to know who he is. Arthur tears off his shirt. He knows what he isn't. He isn't one of them, and he doesn't belong here. Arthur takes off to the cliff and dives into the water. Dr. Shin, who is finally able to catch up to him, is left standing at the edge of the cliff, staring down into the dark waters. Quietly, he says, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And he stayed there for quite some time, at least long enough for the paparazzi to leave and for the sun to set. Then we jump a year closer to the present, and Arthur leaps out of the waves. He is wearing green pants with golden sides. He has on his classic golden belt with a glyph in the center. He does not have on a shirt, although he does have some Atlantean necklaces around his neck. Of course, he has the trident, and judging by his expression, a really bad attitude. In the present day, Arthur explains that he was different back then. Mera is holding the book with the photo that we ended last issue on, asking if all of these people are Atlantean. Arthur says that the others were human or superhuman. He was the only Atlantean, but they were never really a team. Yawara volunteers that she and Arthur had a connection, and Mera just stares at her. Arthur clarifies that she means they had a telepathic connection, but Mera says that does not make things better. Shin explains that they were all allied together because it was necessary to keep the Atlantean relics out of the wrong hands. Yawara then has a brief argument with Shin and Arthur. Arthur told the others that Shin was dead and that he had killed him. But here he is, alive, and now Black Manta is killing them. He would never have found them if Shin wasn't helping him. Arthur honestly doesn't believe that Shin is helping Black Manta, and he doesn't want to believe that Kahina is dead either. If she is dead, then he needs to see the body. Arthur orders Mera to stay here and watch over Shin. If someone shows up to kill him, then protect him. Because if he is connected to this somehow, then Yawara's jaguar gets fed. Mera protests this for a moment, but at the end of the day, she trusts Arthur. Fine. Arthur tells her that he loves her as he takes Yawara's hand. Mera looks at him seriously. Be back soon. Yawara says home in a non-English language, and the pair vanish in a flare of golden light. Mera and Shin wait a little beat in his kitchen, just kind of awkwardly standing there, and then he holds up the glyph. He should get back to this. But Mera stops him. She holds up the photo. He is going to tell her all about how he is connected to Black Manta, and then he is going to tell her everything that he knows about the others. So we've got two things going on here, the flashback and the present day stuff. The flashback scene begins to explain so much about why Arthur behaves the way that he has. This kind of recontextualizes the distance that I noticed between Arthur and the cops, for example, back in issue 1, or Arthur and the Navy a couple of times that we've seen Commander Clay now. That distance doesn't exist because Arthur spent so long a time underwater as King of Atlantis, and that it's just left him different from surface world relations in general. No. That distance exists because humanity hurt Arthur so badly back when he was a teenager. In this flashback, he is clearly being treated like something other, something inhuman. The paparazzi are hounding him, they're trying to capitalize on the death of his father, and if Shin really did betray him before this, then perhaps the one other person that Arthur cared for who is still alive might as well be dead. We have seen no friends, no other family, and the one guy that we know he has a history with, Dr. Shin, has betrayed him. This level of attention probably felt overwhelming on top of all of this. And then add on the fact that he just lost his father, who was probably the one friend that Arthur had. It all just became too much for him. So Arthur rejected the human half of his heritage and accepted the water-based half. We haven't been given a lot of context on how well Arthur was accepted or rejected by Atlantis, though. We do know that he was king for a time, and we have been told that he didn't really fit in, but I mean, he also ruled the nation, so I'm assuming that at least some people liked him. But even that relationship probably took time, and for a young man, angry at the world, that was probably additionally frustrating. Arthur rejected humanity, but he probably wasn't welcomed by Atlanteans either, leaving him awkwardly with nothing to go to and no one as a friend. And now we know that after a year of living underwater, Arthur resurfaced wielding a weapon and still pretty angry. Every interaction that Arthur has had with someone from the surface is informed by this history. He hated humanity so much that he turned his back on it. But now he's trying to defend them? No wonder the man feels awkward. No wonder he doesn't find the water jokes funny. Arthur is battling a deep-seated hatred for humanity, and probably a deep-seated self-hatred for himself as well, because he's half human. Remember the hallucination of his father in the desert, the one that represented Arthur's own self-doubts? Tom pointed out that Arthur doesn't belong to either world, surface or Atlantean. In his heart, Arthur feels like he has no home. And he has chosen to rise above those emotions to become a hero, but those emotions are still there. Listener Cliff Woodbury, how's it going, Cliff? Pointed out in a recent YouTube post that he thinks that one of Arthur's key traits is that he is lost metaphorically. He's not really sure of what to do with himself. Arthur is a physically strong and honestly imposing character, but the best characters, the most interesting characters, have feet of clay, right? They need something personal to struggle with and to overcome. And for Arthur, where he belongs is where he struggles. Comparing Arthur to, say, Batman, in that they are both heroes who take themselves super seriously, works. That makes sense. But this is also where I think that Cliff has a really good point. Batman has a pretty clearly stated yet impossible goal: to stop crime and save lives. Simple, clean, effective. Aquaman does what exactly? Does he rule Atlantis? Does he run a lighthouse? Does he fight crime? And if you say, well, he fights crime, then what kind of crime does he fight? Does he fight only water-based crimes? Is he some kind of superhero? Is he an adventurer? Is he human? Is he Atlantean? He doesn't know. The obvious answer, of course, is that he is all of those things at the same time. But I'm beginning to really see for the first time how torn Arthur is regarding that situation and how much that informs what he does and who he is. As a anime/manga fan, some of my favorite series growing up when I was younger were harem stories. Stuff like Tenchi Muyo or Love Hina, where you've got a main protagonist who is surrounded by a bevy of women, all of whom have a crush on him, and many of whom he does not have a crush back on. The heroes of those stories generally have one girl that they like, and everybody else just gets jealous of the relationship and fights and flirts and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of start to get a little bit of those vibes here with Arthur, Mera, and Yawara. Arthur knows in his heart that he is dedicated to Mera. He has no intention of being in a relationship with Yawara. But now that Yawara has shown up, Mera's hackles are raised, and all of that jealousy and anger is being directed at Arthur, who hasn't done anything to deserve it as of yet. He's just kind of a bystander in this emotional war, and I really dig those vibes. To be fair to Mera, Arthur did not tell her about this potential and yet quite literal other woman, if you will forgive my wordplay. This is tempered for me because it has been made clear previously that there is a lot of stuff that Arthur hasn't shared with Mera yet. And given the strength of Arthur's anger back when he was a teenager, and how far he must have come emotionally to overcome that anger, I can see why he wouldn't want to talk to Mera about what has happened in his past. All of the pain of his life is back there, so leave it back there. He would rather focus on the now and his time with Mera. Now we jump back in time again 6 years. Wait, 6 years? 6 years ago, Tom Curry died and Arthur ran off to the ocean. 5 years ago is when he resurfaced, literally resurfaced. So shouldn't this scene be happening 5 years ago? Or at least slightly less than 5 years ago, I suppose, if he returned to the surface and then went on adventures with the others? All right, so 5-ish years ago, in Siberia, Aquaman and the others are running through a snow-covered forest. A large explosion is going off behind them, movie style, but don't worry, folks, they're okay. Leading the charge, Aquaman scoffs. Manta thinks that explosives will stop them? Well, he's wrong. Kahina gets a brief vision and stumbles in her stride. Prisoner, a man with a burlap sack over his head, helps her stay on her feet. She explains that she saw a small village on the other side of the mountain. Hundreds of people are going to die in the avalanche. Prisoner starts to redirect them, but Aquaman counters it. They need to stay on Manta's trail. Vostok, in his golden helmet, quietly says that the people there are Russian, like him. Aquaman cuts him off. Look, if you're going to talk, Vostok, then talk. You are no more connected to those people than I am. So if he doesn't want to help stop Black Manta, then he can go back to his box. Otherwise, we keep moving. They cannot lose Manta's trail now, Arthur says. But the others turn away from him. They refuse to let innocent people die. Vostok uses his jetpack to fly survivors away from the snow. Operative is carrying a child, and he says that they are out of time. They need to grab who they can and go. Prisoner says no. Either they are all going to survive this, or they're all going to die with them. For the first time, we can see a chain of dog tags around Prisoner's neck, roughly 13 of them. He braces himself in the snow, and then he bangs his golden bangles together. The two chains hanging from either set snap back together, and a golden force field suddenly appears all around them. The avalanche hits the field and flows around it. Behind them, though, Vostok spots a little girl running. This is the same girl that Kahina saw in her vision. She is just about to be swept under the snow when Aquaman grabs her and jumps away. After they land on a nearby peak, Aquaman unceremoniously just drops the girl, and he looks down at his allies. When they finally gather around him again, Aquaman says that Manta is gone. Again. Operative can't believe that he would just let all those people die. Would catching Manta have really been worth all of their lives? How many lives have you sacrificed? Aquaman asks in reply, for the greater good. Operative stares the young man down through green goggles. Revenge isn't the greater good. Yawara touches Arthur on the shoulder, trying to get him to calm down. But he doesn't want to be calmed. He tells them all to leave. Just go. But Kahina walks up to him. She's seen his future. And, Arthur asks, does he find Black Manta? Kahina gently touches his cheek. Even better, my friend. You find happiness. Hard cut to now, where Kahina lies dead in the Brazilian jungle. That's a mood killer. Arthur says that he never thanked her. Not really. He wraps her in her own robes, sure that the seal of clarity is gone. If Manta has it, then he'll be able to find the others, so they need to warn them. Arthur says that he owes them that. He owes them all, more than he can ever. Gunfire suddenly interrupts them. A group of locals are shooting at them with machine guns, shouting that they need to kill them for the Black Manta. Black Manta, meanwhile, is at Heidelberg, Germany, at the United States Army Health Center. He reports to somebody that he is there, and that he has found another. Wow. Johns is really loving these dramatic endings with these issues. So we've got one major mystery going on right now. Someone called Dr. Shin last issue, right before Yawara showed up. It could be a coincidence that she showed up right as he was being contacted, but this is the written world of comic books, where if it is on the page, then somebody meant it to be on the page. Shin did seem at a loss when he answered the phone, so I think the accusation that he is working with Black Manta is just a red herring. I think that John wants us to suspect Shin, and the real, traitor, I guess, Manta's real partner, the real villain, will be somebody else entirely. That said, the end scene confirms that Black Manta is working with someone, so we'll be keeping our eye on that moving forward. Is it Dr. Shin? Is it not? Interesting. The majority of the back half of this issue deals with two main concepts, Aquaman in the now and Aquaman back then. At this point in the comic, I feel like we've got a pretty good bead on who modern-day Arthur is. His lack of charisma, let's say, is on full display concerning his history with Yawara. I love her explaining that they had a telepathic connection, like that's something that's supposed to reassure Mera. Clearly, Yawara and Arthur got along because both of them have the charm of a brick. Despite Mera's minor jealousy, I don't really think that there's anything going on between Arthur and Yawara. Or was anything going on, I suppose. And John moves us on from it pretty quickly to actually life-threatening matters, because keep in mind, we are reading a superhero adventure comic book, and that's kind of the main stuff that we want. This relationship stuff is fun, but I want to do globetrotting. I want to investigate murder. I want to see what Black Manta's up to. Yeah! Leaving Mera with Shin makes good sense from a tactical standpoint on Arthur's part. Mera is extremely powerful and can handle almost any threat. She knows that Arthur doesn't trust Shin, so she'll keep a good eye on him. And Yawara wanted to kill him as soon as she showed up, so trusting her with Shin would be like trusting a shark with your school of fish. Somebody's bound to get eaten. That leads us directly into the flashback and young Arthur. The scene where we see the paparazzi are hounding him and that he is upset about his dad dying. Oh, holy crap. That really got to me. Up to this point, we haven't seen much of Arthur's childhood, so we've got no real idea what his childhood or adolescence was like. But we do know that his mom wasn't around, so he was close to his father, and Dr. Shin probably acted as a secondary father figure, helping him to manage his powers when he was younger. But then Dr. Shin did whatever it was that he did to hurt Arthur, and end up being cut off. So, with his dad dead and Shin dead to him emotionally, and his mama in general no-show for years, all Arthur has left is his sorrow. And like the angsty teen he is, he chooses to hate humanity and just blow the whole scene. Quite frankly, my man, I hear ya. We have certainly seen Arthur carry that emotional pain in our previous issues. His interactions with the others in the flashback scene, for example, feel very one-sided. All of them, the others, are clearly allied against Manta, but they do not automatically listen to Arthur as their leader. He might be the dominant personality of the group, but he isn't their leader or something along those lines. This is not Optimus Prime. It's actually kind of telling that the group is referred to as Aquaman and the others, and not just the others as if it was a unified team, because it does feel like two separate entities that are just working towards the same goal, but are not the same thing. We see within that division a coldness to Arthur that we have not seen on display before in this comic. Young Arthur was willing to let a whole village die if it meant accomplishing his goal, which really feels like a far cry from a man who is haunted about killing the creatures from the trench. I am super into seeing Arthur's growth from an arrogant, cocky jerk to the more level-headed superhero that we've been reading about in these issues. But I do have a minor problem here. Kahina's power is all over the place. When we saw Black Manta attack her, he sneaks off that bomb attack by guessing that Kahina can only see so far into the future. If she could see everything in the future, then Kahina would have seen the bomb coming and she would have dodged that part of the attack as well, but she didn't. Johns demonstrated that she has a limited window of time that she can peek into in that scene. But then she saw into the far future, I guess, when Manta stabbed Arthur, because we haven't seen that happen yet. And then in this flashback sequence, she sees Arthur happy, so when the hell does that happen? For some reason, my brain automatically assumes that Kahina is referring to Arthur's relationship with Mera, but, that isn't necessarily true. That might not be when he became quote-unquote happy, whenever that was. So, can Kahina see any distance into the future? Can she choose what she's looking for, or how long of a time she wants to look? And if she doesn't have any limits, why didn't she keep looking into the future when she was being hunted? And if the seal is what gave her her powers, which is what this comic seems to be indicating, and then Black Manta took that seal, how does Kahina still have the vision of Arthur being stabbed right before she dies? This is one of the downsides of killing off a brand new character like Kahina. Geoff Johns just had no time to really explore these powers. As an audience member, I will probably always be left wondering how her powers work and what is the context for them and how do you push with that and play with that. I don't know. Although I guess maybe somebody else could take up the mantle of the seer at some point. If the seal itself grants the gift of clairvoyance, somebody else could pick up that box. Overall, though, I like the drama that we're getting here. I probably like the drama the most, to be quite honest. I like the idea of the others, and I am so down for their relationship with Arthur being one that is rough and incredibly ill-defined. So far, Black Manta is coming off as an absolute unit, and it feels like Johns is starting to knit together a lot of background details that he has been setting up in our previous issues. Those stitches aren't quite pulling together quite yet, but we've still got time, and then B, maybe they won't. Who knows? Until we get to the point where they do, though, we've got more of the others to kill. Next time, Aquaman and Yawara try to link up with the rest of the others, but Black Manta has a head start, and he is holding nothing back. We'll meet Prisoner and the Operative, and learn why Black Manta and Aquaman hate each other so strongly. Join me in a week for Comic Book Breakdown episode 26.6 of Aquaman, Sins of Youth. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.